I see teaching as a very political act. When we are engaging with our students, whether it's on social justice issues or multicultural issues or culturally relevant teaching, I see that as foundational to all learning.
So I was a 7th grade civics teacher, government teacher, and she is an elementary school teacher.
What year did we get our independence?
17 something. We're teachers.
I actually don't teach what's in our curriculum. I'm teaching children social studies that's not in our curriculum, teaching them things about how to be an anti-racist. I taught them about protesting. I taught them about Black Lives Matter. I taught them about Black Lives Matter.
Okay, TikTok, I really need your help here on this one. I'm a teacher. I teach 5th and 6th grade, and this morning, I don't know, somehow the concept of pronouns came up. And one of my students said, well, Miss Odell, did you even ask me my pronouns? And I was like, whoa, I hadn't actually asked him his pronouns, and I had called him a him, and I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I haven't actually asked you what your pronouns are, and what are they? And he said, Banana said, banana and rock. And I was like, dude, no, like, don't mess around with, I was actually really upset because I thought he was making fun of it. And in fact, I'm still pretty sure he was making fun of it. And, but they all agreed, no, like, you can choose anything. Banana, rock, if you want banana and rock to be a pronoun, banana and rock's your pronoun. Is it? TikTok, tell me.
This is in reference to me hanging my pride flag in my classroom in Texas. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know if I'm allowed to hang it up this year. But I did. And to double down, I now have pride lights across the top of my whiteboard too. Honestly, I don't know how admin's gonna react. I don't know if they're gonna react at all. But I do know that hanging this up is one of the things that makes my classroom as safe as it is. And I'll keep it up until somebody tells me to take it down. So I guess I'll keep y'all updated.
So I have never personally had any my kindergarten students come in with like they them pronouns or anything that's considered like atypical pronouns. So I cannot speak from experience, but I can tell you the way I would handle it is by just respecting their pronouns, especially if the parent communicates that ahead of time or the child communicates that. I can't think of any training specifically that have ever really been like preparing me for this. I've done like my own research and stuff like that, but also I support the LGBTQIA plus community. I would really hope that most teachers could put their political beliefs aside and just be respectful to whatever their students say that they prefer. Because you don't necessarily have to agree. You don't have to see what they see and whatever, but you do have to be respectful. I think most good teachers would do that.
I'm like very out at work. At least at my teaching job, I'm very out. I wear my pronouns and stuff, and I'm like, I like correct the kids, and the kids have gotten to like correcting each other. And it was like so awesome today. I was in charge of our like active activity, and one of the kids referred to me as a girl, and one of my kids was like, Jamie doesn't have a gender. Jamie's not a girl. Oh my god. And like the kid was just like, what do you mean? And she was just like, Jamie doesn't have a gender. Jamie is not a girl. I like the way that has me is so emotional. Like she like even like said the pronouns to him. Oh my god. She was like, Jamie's they. She's 8. My 52-year-old parents still fucking call me she after being out for 3 years. And I like just told really started correcting the kids back in like September. Like that was like so awesome. That was just like so awesome. Like I've like never felt more loved than like when I am with my kids. Like they like correct each other. Are you kidding me?
I've been wanting to do content around this day, which is really important to me as this is my first year as I'm out as a non-binary teacher. But it's hard. It's hard to think how to talk about it and how to make it pithy and catchy, and I sent what felt like a pretty vulnerable email out to my colleagues, suggesting a whole bunch of resources for each division and offering to come into their classes. And I'm so grateful to the 3 allies or accomplices who invited me into their class today to read. I just read They, She, He, Me, Free to Be, to a grade 1 class, and I just read this book to a grade 1 class, and one of the students came out as trans. Staff knew she was trans, and we talked to her parents last night about me coming in, and they'd given it the go-ahead, and it was such beautiful proof that kids of any age are absolutely capable of accepting anything that they are taught with love, because her class didn't bat an eyelid. Didn't bat an eyelid at me not being a man, woman, both or neither. Didn't bat an eyelid at her having been born a boy, and were able to make all kinds of beautiful personal connections. So please, no matter what age your kids are or what age you teach, it is so important that you teach them that trans people are valuable. Hey friends, I'm back after another class, still with my lovely N95 redness, and I just wanted to say, it's been such a powerful day. I had another student come see me and make a plan to come out to his class because she hadn't felt confident doing that yet, and so that was really exciting to see that happen and to be able to facilitate that.
I have this giant pride flag in my classroom, and I work at a school that's got a lot of homophobia. So every time somebody new comes into my classroom, they have this look of just utter confusion, and I live for it. It genuinely gives me life. So, thanks for that. Pledge allegiance to the pride flag. So I made a video before about the pride flag in my classroom. There he is, big guy. But I also have a bunch of tiny, smaller pride flags in my room as well. And today my kids were asking me about them, specifically about the ACE one. And when I was explaining what it meant, one of my students, I think, discovered their identity today. And that to me is the biggest argument in favor of having things like this in classrooms, because for a lot of students, this is their only exposure to this kind of stuff where they feel safe enough to explore and ask questions. So yeah, fuck you if you think these shouldn't be here.
Person for the exam on Thursday. Okay. Yeah, I hear you, Nicole. Northam needs to come back. I was much happier with an MD as a governor instead of a Trumpist retard. So there's that.
I'm a non-binary elementary school teacher, so here's how I talk to my students about pronouns and such. Hi, my name is Mix K. It's mix. So kind of like cookie mix or mixing bowl, that sort of thing. That's how it's pronounced. That is my name. That is the name that I'm comfortable with. It is the name that makes me happy, and I would like it if you referred to me as such. See, I'm not a Mr. or a Miss, so I go by Mix because that's what makes me happy. Now, you have a name that you like to be called other than the name that's on the paper, right? It's the same thing for me. I have a name that I prefer to be called, and that's the one that you're going to use for me, okay? Now, I don't consider myself to be a boy or a girl. I just see myself as a person. So that's why I go by Mix. So I'm actually non-binary. I'm not really comfortable with feminine terms being used for me. If you can find some alternatives, that would be great. My pronouns are they, them, and she, her. Thank you so much for asking. What are yours? Talking about gender is not something that's out of the realm for children. Honestly, the most understanding people when it comes to my identity have been the students that I work with. So it's important to be yourself, because being openly you is probably the most important thing you can do for the kids of this generation.
Hi, I'm Linz. I'm a queer and trans educator and children's performer, creator, writer. You might know me from my web series Queer Kid Stuff, where I talk about gender and sexuality stuff for all ages with a preschool audience in mind. And I write for preschool television, do a lot of stuff in early childhood ed. The short answer to this question is that we need to talk to preschoolers about sexuality and gender because any later is too late. The long answer to this is that this is the age when children start to self-identify. They start to understand themselves and in relation to the world around them. They need to understand different gender diversity because the Academy of Pediatrics actually says that most children have a solid understanding of their gender identity by the age of 4, and that is inclusive of cis as well as trans and non-binary kids. Preschoolers need to understand sexuality because of the world around them. They might not identify with a sexuality yet, but their parents do, and their friends' parents do. And in order to understand different family structures and other people's experiences and develop empathy, they need to understand queerness. Preschoolers are exposed to sexuality every day. Just look at literally any Disney movie where there is heterosexual kissing. It is normal to talk to kids about straight relationships and straight couples and nuclear heterosexual families. So why should queerness and queer families and queer sexuality be any different? Kids as young as preschoolers need to understand gender and sexuality in order to develop empathy for others and to be able to understand themselves in relationship to the world around them and the people around them. Once you get past this age, it's a lot harder to undo and complicate the ideas of the kind of cis heteronormative world that these kids and we are in.
Would you be able to answer this question on one of my tests for social psychology? Simple essay question after going through privilege, what privilege is, giving examples of privilege, explaining how there are different types of privilege like white privilege, male privilege, Christian privilege, able-bodied privilege, thin privilege, cisgender privilege, straight privilege, and others. All right, so simple question I ask my students, essay question. Tell me one way that you have privilege. Tell me one type of privilege you have. Well, my makeup is all over the place today. All right. It still is. Anyway, I always am a mess. Tell me what kind of privilege you have. Explain how it's an example of privilege and say how your life would be different if you didn't have that particular type of privilege. Would you be able to answer that question? Can you come up with a type of privilege you have? Are you able to say out loud and admit to yourself and to the world that you have that privilege? Because one thing I find is my students don't. Even when I have clearly explained what privilege is and how it doesn't mean your life has been easy, it doesn't mean you're a bad person if you have privilege, still they just go, oh no, I don't know. No, I don't have any privilege. The test question, a lot of students will leave it blank. It could be for a variety of reasons, not necessarily because they, don't understand or don't take the class seriously or anything. But I get weak ass answers, like, oh, well, I've got strong privilege. I've got smart privilege. I'm like, you could have said you had white privilege. You could have said you had male privilege. At the very least, because I'll have some students, they're like, look, I am a black transgender individual. I don't have a whole lot of privilege. I'm like, okay, now think about your life. Think about certain advantages that you have that you probably didn't notice that you have. And an example I often go with, I say, even if you've got disabilities, you don't have all the disabilities. There's some disability that you would be lacking, that you'd have privilege from not having that disability. Like for example, if you are sighted, you can see, you don't need accommodations for that. You've never had to think about, oh, is the textbook going to be available in Braille? Am I going to get it on time for the semester? That's just one of many examples I'll try to throw out. I'm like, just think, what sorts of privileges do you have? And they just don't want to do it. There's so much resistance. So I'm asking you, what sorts of privileges do you have? Can you own up to it? I'll start. I have white privilege for sure. I have cisgender, straight privilege. I have able-bodied privilege. Don't have thin privilege, but as someone who's just a mid-fat, not a larger, I know there are official terms, and I'm probably going to use the different terms, but the larger fat, and I think the larger categories, I'm not there, so I have privilege from being on the smaller end of fatness. I've got privilege. What are yours?
I know I'm probably gonna get a lot of shit for this, but I don't really care. Who cares? We're doing summer programming, and this year I vowed to make a really strong effort to figure out how my students want to be acknowledged as far as their pronouns. So naturally, I'm leading by example, right? I've got my name, she, her. That's how I identify. Easy, simple. So they know that they would call me Miss Kramer instead of, Mr. or whatever, because, the hair, there's still stigma, whatever. On our first assignment, I asked them to put their preferred pronouns on their papers. And not one kid protested, not one kid. They were all super comfortable and super down with it. But look at this. I'm covering their name, but look at that. I'm okay being called they, them, she, her, or he, him. They're totally down for that. I can't help but feel like that kid now feels safe and comfortable being who they are.